April 21st, 1933. Dear Harry, nothing makes me happier than receiving one of your letters, not even waking up without fever, and taking into account that rare is the day I wake up feverless. Imagine how excited your letters make me feel. It amazes me that my old house in Newburyport is still standing. Despite how far away my childhood is now, I have so many beautiful memories of that house and that small coastal town. Did I ever talk to you about Grandpa Isaiah? You didn't get to know him. He died relatively young, and from the same disease that also took Mother, the same disease that I am suffering from now. Grandpa Isaiah was such a loving man. I used to sit on his lap and rest my head in his long white beard as he read fairy tales to me. It was also in that house where you met my mother, remember? She liked you so much. He's a good boy, Nora. You can see it in his eyes, she said. And if he hardly needs glasses, tell him not to wear them. He would look better without them. I'm so glad she lived to attend our wedding, even though she was very ill. Regarding the tiara you sent me in the photo, I think I have a vague memory of it as a child, on a school trip to the Newburyport Historical Society. I believe that even back then I was shocked by its resemblance to the music box. That old broken thing. I don't know if my memory is playing tricks on me, but I swear I remember it played music once. As a child, I found it mesmerizing, and I even liked it. But since Mother died and bequeathed it to me, I loathe it. It only brings back hurtful memories of Mother's death. And nightmares. I keep dreaming about that music box, even now that you've taken it away with you. Besides the nightmares, there's also the fatigue, and the fever comes and goes, as you know. It usually rises at noon, so as mornings tend to be more bearable, I try to spend them writing in my journal or taking a short stroll. And don't worry, I always carry the cane with me. Regarding your question, I think that if, as you comment, there are more tiara-like relics at Miskatonic University, it makes sense for you to head to Arkham. Take care of yourself, and eat well. Love you, Nora. P.S. King takes king's knight pawn. Checkmate in 2.
June 16th, 1933. Dear Nora, so glad to hear about your morning strolls. As long as you carry the cane with you and walk at a moderate pace, you have no reason to worry. I wish I could be there to walk arm in arm with you. I have met Henry Armitage, head of the Miskatonic Library. He is the kind of person I like to relate to, wise, thoughtful, and methodical, living the life I've always longed for, working at the university without having to deal with students. Although you always say that deep down I'm not that bad, and at the end of the school year, all my students think highly of Harry the Hermit, I guess you just always look kindly upon me. It is surprising how well versed Armitage is in archaeology and ancient history for a doctor of literature. Not only did he know about the Newburyport tiara, but he also has shown me the other relics they have on display at the university. He pointed out the coincidence of the golden high-reliefs and the irregular shapes in both cases, and comments that these patterns are frequent in some structures on islands of Micronesia and French Polynesia. He also gave me a dossier with information on the culture and traditions of the South Pacific. While I was in Arkham, I took the chance to meet the doctor that the dermatologist who saw you in Denver recommended to us. This fella may be a real eminence in medicine, but my gosh, what an oddball. If I was guided by his appearance, I would have never hired him. Scruffy looks, greasy hair, unkempt beard. He's always wiping his sweat with a handkerchief. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, he also smokes like a chimney. I know that I smoke too and you hate it. But in my defense, I have to say that I smoke a pipe, which definitely gives me a stately and distinguished modern Sherlock Holmes look, so it is not the same thing at all. You didn't buy it, did you? Well, where were we? Jokes aside, the guy seemed fascinated when he saw the photo of the stains on your hand. Apparently, he is a specialist in skin disorders. He pointed out some similarities to genetic alterations and natural mutations of different fish species. He also mentioned their relationship to tribal tattoos that replicate those fish patterns. And guess where those tribes are? In the South Pacific. I know how strange this may sound, especially when Denver is probably the furthest you've ever traveled in your life. But I believe that the answer to your illness must be found somewhere in the Pacific. Anyway, if I'm going to organize an expedition, I'll need money. So I have no choice but to talk to my parents. I'm headed to the Everhart Manor in Boston, so wish me luck and patience. Love, Harry. P.S. King to King 4. And don't even dream of that checkmate in 2, you show-off.
Hello?
Hello, Nora.
Harry? What happened? How did it go?
Well, you know.
Oh, it didn't go well, did it?
I can't stand talking to him. She isn't much better either, but at least she doesn't use that condescending tone with me.
I'm sorry, my love. You know how they are.
Yes, I know them perfectly. All the more reason for not having come here.
Has your father taken the opportunity to remind you that you should never have married me?
No, I already warned him the last time we talked. I told him I wasn't going to tolerate that kind of comment. And if he said that one more time, he would never see me again.
I see. So, I assume they are not going to fund the expedition.
Of course not. But he took the opportunity to remind me that a university teacher's salary barely pays for doctor's bills. You should have graduated in law, Harrison. Thank you for the wise advice, Father.
Well, if your father hadn't forced you to study law, we may never have met.
Yes, that is true. Meeting you was the only good thing that came out of those 2 tedious years. At least I'm out of there. Every time I step on Everhart Manor, I feel I'm 6 years old and have just broken out Margaret's Chinese vase again.
Rich and Maddie always say the same thing. Donna is the only one still attached to your parents, but I think that's mostly because she is the younger sister.
Yes, you're right. My parents should put 2 and 2 together. If all your sons have fled from you like the plague, maybe you should consider that your parenting has been a total disaster.
Oh, Harry, I feel so sorry for you every time I hear you talk about your parents.
Don't worry about that, my love. There are more important things right now. I'll get the money for the expedition somehow. I don't know how exactly, but I'll find it, I swear.
Harry, why don't you come back home?
Forget it. I told you when I left. I will return with a cure, or I will not return at all.
Okay, take it easy, Douglas Fairbanks. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll be more pleased with you coming back in one piece, with or without a cure.
You are so good to me. What would I do without you, my dear old pal?
Probably you'd be living in a you'd be living on a porch, sitting in a rocking chair with a loaded shotgun on your lap, yelling, "You're trespassing!" to strangers. Listen, Harry, I trust you. Just go to sleep and don't think about it anymore. We'll find a way.
I love you so much, Nora.
I love you too, Harry. July 20, 1933. Dear Harry, I still feel really bad about what you had to go through with your parents. You know I've never meddled in the disputes between you and them, mostly because you know that I rather keep my mouth shut if I don't have anything nice to say of someone. I know they'll never accept that you married a middle-class girl, and I almost grow accustomed to it. What I will never be accustomed to is that they don't care about the well-being of their son. You always say the main reason why you don't want children is because you thought you'd be a terrible father, like yours. But let me tell you something, Harry. You are nothing like John Washington Everhart. Not even a little bit. And if it makes you feel better, I think you would make a wonderful father. Don't panic. I haven't changed my mind about having kids. I'm still terrified of passing this disease on to my children. Anyway, let's just move on, my love. So, the journalist is a woman. What a surprise. I don't know why, but when you mentioned that a journalist wanted to have a meeting with you, I immediately assumed she was a man. That's how society works, I guess. Remember that there were only 4 girls in your class year at law. Arts had a little more women, but most students in Boston University were men. Honestly, I hope that changes one day, and we won't find it strange that women can do as many relevant things as men. I wonder how she knew you were back in the city. I guess that the return of an Everhart family member to Boston must be hot news, not only for the high society of the city, but for all the gossip press. But you say she's not into gossip, right? She's an investigative journalist at the Boston Herald, and she not only knew about the Newburyport tiara, but she covered it when the exposition came to Boston. What a coincidence. I never heard of either of those news items she mentioned to you, though. I think I remember reading something about a riot in Innsmouth a few years ago, but the FBI raiding a fishing village? That sounds like tabloid news to me, Harry. Anyway, she definitely looks resourceful. And who knows? Maybe the money that your parents refused to give you can be obtained through that society that she's talking about. And if that doesn't work, I'm sure there'll be another way. There's always a way, old pal. With love, Nora. P.S. Pawn to King's Rook 5. Checkmate in 1.
September 1, 1933. Dear Nora, it has always seemed to me that there is something disturbing in this city. I find it hard to explain what it is, but despite how weird this place feels sometimes, I also think it would be the perfect place for a crank like me. I could spend hours in the Providence Athenaeum. It's a shame that this city has this terrible weather. The journalist arranged a meeting with the president of the Starry Wisdom Society, a certain Caleb Bowen. These people pretend to be an astronomical society, but I recognize the stench of an occultist circle for miles. I don't know if I ever told you this. When I was a child, Everhart Manor was full of mediums, psychics, fortune tellers, and all sorts of nut jobs. Mother was into all that supernatural crap for years and held a seance almost weekly. Fortunately, Father put an end to that nonsense when he found out. One of the few good things he did for our family. I wouldn't have a problem with these people's mystic kook talk, other than a waste of time, if it wasn't for the fact that they season their supernatural baloney with a nice dose of eugenics and race supremacism. Some of the things that Bowen fella said sounded straight out of a Hitler speech. I find them abhorrent. They offered to finance the expedition, but I, of course, declined. I don't see myself leading the loony crusade for a bunch of Nazi sympathizers. I have enough already traveling with Madam Mystery, the journalist, and Dr. Jekyll. I still have to decide what kind of freak I am. The only good thing I got from that meeting was that I acquired a very peculiar piece of equipment. It's a strange optical machine made by a scientist named Tillinghast, apparently for some sort of glasses he intended to market. It didn't go well, apparently. The guy died, poor as a church mouse, I think, and he never managed to sell his doohickey. Although the machine was broken, it was so dirt cheap that it piqued my interest. When I return to Englewood, maybe we can mess around with it and see if we can make it work. Sounds like a fun evening plan, right? Anyway, the journalist doesn't seem to be too worried about getting funding for the expedition. She says we'll find a way. I have a hunch with the next meeting that I have tomorrow. So if everything goes as planned, San Francisco should be our next stop before setting sail to the Pacific. We are really close, Nora. So close. I love you. Harry. P.S. King to King's Bishop 4. Oh, crap.
Hello?
On the first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me Come on, Nora. A partridge in a pear tree.
Oh my goodness, Harry Scrooge is embodied by the spirits of Christmas. 2 weeks in advance. Where are you, old pal?
Our car engine was faulty, so we had to stop. I took the chance to have a coffee because I was falling asleep at the wheel. I'm not sure what state we're in. Mississippi or Arkansas, it doesn't matter. It still is the middle of nowhere.
Oh, hey, city slicker. Show some respect for those of us who grew up in rural, hard-working America.
Oh, excuse me. On the second day of Christmas, my true love sent to me.
You didn't take advantage of the prohibition ending a week ago, did you?
You know I don't drink, ma'am. It's just my natural joy de vivre. Or maybe the coffee is kicking in. Or maybe there is some other thing.
Oh,
We have the money, Nora. The Boston Herald is funding the expedition.
really?
Yes, that journalist really earned her place in the expedition, I'll tell you. She is really a resourceful woman. Kind of reminds me of you.
Oh, should I be worried, Casanova Earhart?
Not at all, ma'am. Mainly for two reasons. First, I prefer blondes.
That's a good reason. And the second one?
The second is that I am an antisocial curmudgeon and I hate dealing with people.
Well, you've got that one right, Harry the Hermit.
Really? You did manage to make it work? That fast?
Harry, who are you talking to?
I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's the mechanic. Just a second. You're a whiz, mister. Wouldn't you be interested by any chance in an exciting job opportunity in the Pacific? Well, that was quick. I have to go now, Nora. I'll call you as soon as I get to the West Coast.
I'll be waiting for your call, handsome. Drive with care.
Don't worry. I'll take care. Merry Christmas, gorgeous. I love you.
We're still 2 weeks ahead, but Merry Christmas, my love. January 1934. My dear old pal. Today I woke up with a high fever, and you know I always tend to get too sentimental when I'm not feeling well. That's why I decided to open this letter with our term of endearment. I know it's sickly sweet and even a little bit silly, but it means a lot to me. Remember when we slow danced, dear old pal of mine, at that party at your sister Maddie's house? I'll never forget that night. We were celebrating the end of the Great War. It was our first dance, and our first kiss. Though I almost had to drag you to dance with me, you dull, boring man. I'm so glad I already knew the way you were when we started dating. When I fell in love with my grumpy old pal, Harry, I knew I was falling in love with the real person, not with some Prince Charming facade. That's why I find all your imperfections, all your obsessions, and even all your eccentricities so sweet. Ugh, I'm getting silly again. Must be the fever rising. And why am I being so sweet when you're planning to a detour to Hollywood, you lucky scoundrel? That is not a detour, it's a pleasure trip. Do you really expect me to believe that the last member of your expedition is a Hollywood stuntman who happens to be a friend of that magic mechanic you knew in Mississippi? I'm kidding, of course. I'm glad someone could help you out with that flat tire in the middle of the road. What I don't want to even know is how much money you had to offer that mechanic, so he agreed to go with you on the expedition. But if, as you say, he's not only fixed your car in record time, but has also managed to repair the lens machine, well, then he must deserve every cent of whatever you must be paying him. Back to that Hollywood detour. How I would love to be there with you. I'm so much into movies. Do you remember when we saw 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in the Orpheum Theatre? Oh, don't forget to ask that stuntman if he's been in any box office hit movies. And ask him if he's met any famous actors. Clark Gable, Greta Garbo, one of the Barrymores, maybe. Oh, my. I think I've spent my remaining strength in writing this letter to you. Now I'm feeling faint. I'll go back to bed now. I miss you so much, my love. Nora. P.S. In another vein, bishop to queen 4. Checkmate. You lost. Again.
February 1934. My dear old pal, as you can see, I liked your header so much that I've decided to. Did I ever tell you that a colleague in the history department once heard me talking to you on the phone? And though thought you were actually an old friend, he was so puzzled by the old pal thing that when I explained it to him, he actually asked me if we were married. I swear that when you fully recover, I will take a leave of absence from the university and we will travel around the world together, my love. Europe, Asia, Australia, you name it. In the meantime, I'm sending you a book about the area we'll be traveling to. It won't be like being there with me, but at least you'll have a clearer picture of where I am. And according to what the bookstore owner told me, this Gifford Patchett fella is one of the greatest experts in Pacific Islands traditions and culture. Just a few quick notes on that Hollywood stuntman. The man, who, by the way, goes by a cowboy name that I honestly doubt is his real name, is insufferable. I've had to explain to him a couple of times that real archaeology is never like the movies, but I don't think he gets the idea. I believe he has seen King Kong too many times. Oh, and his favorite subject is detailing all his romances with Hollywood celebrities. I think Sarah Bernhardt may be the only missing actress in his love affair list. We arrived in San Francisco yesterday, and they're building a massive bridge here, Nora. You probably wouldn't appreciate it in the picture, but this thing is going to be huge when it's finished. However, no matter in which season you come to this city, it always has this miserable weather. I believe it has something to do with a current that starts in British Columbia and ends in Mexico, but shouldn't that make San Francisco hotter rather than colder? I know you already know it, but let me say it again. I really, really, really hate cold weather. I still have to find a few things about the specific location I'm headed to, but if the research I've done is correct, it'll be someplace in the heart of the Pacific. We'll be embarking on a journey in a couple days, so it'll take me a few weeks at sea. But I will write again as soon as I arrive at my destination, I swear. Just remember, Norah Everhart, you are my love, my life, my wife, my partner, my best friend. You are everything to me. Love you. Harry. P.S. About our chess game, my final statement is that you obviously cheated, so this game is not valid.